So today's big idea. Southeast Asia has long said it doesn't want to choose between Washington and Beijing. But Khong and Liow argue the region is already choosing, often unintentionally, through a pile-up of economic, diplomatic, and security decisions that nudge countries one way or the other. With nearly 700 million people and outsized economic clout, where Southeast Asia lands will shape the balance of power in Asia. So as always, a bit of a disclaimer. This episode is basically a summary of these authors' opinions, those being Foong Khong and Joseph Chinyong Liow. They're both professors and or a co-director and dean at colleges at the Technological University of Singapore, right? Okay. That being said, let's start with the lesson. So hedging is narrowing. So countries don't announce basically that they choose which one. They kind of drift there. So signing up for initiatives, realigning trade and investment, signaling in public, and setting security habits is basically how they do that. So the author's takeaway is Southeast Asia's direction of travel is toward China, even as many elites still trust Japan and the United States more. U.S. choices, especially on economics, can speed up or slow down that drift. So who's in play? Much of Asia is already spoken for, so Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Australia lean towards the U.S. Pakistan leans toward China. India hedges toward the U.S., but the key ASEAN states, as in Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, remain the prize in a superpower contest that's intensifying and likely to be more complex than the old U.S.-Soviet rivalry. So measuring this drift. The authors build a 20-indicator alignment index across 5 domains, those being political diplomatic ties, military security, economics, soft power, and public signaling. And basically the scores range from 0, meaning fully China, to 100, fully US. And 45 to 50 on the scale basically counts as genuine hedging. Using this yardstick, several countries have moved closer to Beijing over the past 3 decades. Indonesia, they warn, may be sleepwalking that way, less by grand strategy than by cumulative choices in Chinese-led multilateral initiatives. So power versus trust. China's comprehensive power now approaches 90% of the U.S. level on the Lowy Institute's Asia Power Index, reflecting decades of growth and tighter regional linkages. Yet, trust runs differently. In the IC's USOF-ISOC, 2024 survey, regional elites rank Japan first, the US second, the EU third, and China fourth. So basically, many see China as the dominant economic force, but still worry about how Beijing would wield that power and trust the US more, at least according to the indices. So the U.S. still has cards. American private investment in Southeast Asia now surpasses U.S. investment in China, Japan, and South Korea combined. And many governments want U.S. firms and market access. But Washington's own moves can backfire. The April 2nd Liberation Day tariffs hitting Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, and the threats of 100% tariffs for joining or moving towards the BRICS risk burning goodwill and pushing the region further toward Beijing. What leaders are saying is that Singapore's Prime Minister, for example, Lawrence Wong, described a new normal in April 2025, with America stepping back from its traditional guarantor role. No one else is ready to fill this gap. And while Singapore's then Defense Minister Ng Eng Hen quipped the U.S. now looks like a landlord seeking rent, basically. If the U.S. economic leadership proceeds, the temptation for Asian capitals to gravitate towards China will grow. So geography and dependency. Basically, proximity matters. So Laos now owes about half its foreign debt to China. Myanmar's want to rely on Beijing for trade and diplomatic cover, despite deep suspicions. Vietnam has edged cautiously towards Washington, but only upgraded ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2023, 15 years after doing so with China, and the U.S. remains far away. So, security exceptions prove the rule. Some lines are clear. The Philippines leans U.S. on security and sees deterrence as stabilizing. Yet the broader region, have your cake and eat it too instinct, is running into pressure from both Washington and Beijing, each less tolerant of cost-free hedging. So in conclusion, Khong and Liow's bottom line is that Southeast Asia may say it won't choose, but policy choices are adding up, and the region's net drift is toward China. The United States still commands trust and investment, but if it checks out economically or shows up erratically, it will cede the field. And basically, if you want kind of like a full analysis, this article actually does break down the individual scores for each country. Just as an example, so it puts the Philippines at 60, which is slightly leaning towards the U.S., but other countries such as like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, and a few others are also in here too. So I highly recommend you, if this is kind of interesting for you, to actually come and read it yourself. It's in this past issue of Foreign Affairs, July and August 2025. So with that being said, I will leave this here, and I will see you guys on the next one.